Well, it's that time again, ladies and gentlemen. It's Thursday night, and it is the show on SportsNetUSA.net. I am Corey Nayland alongside Mark Pavlovich, Ed Ford, going back behind the screens right now, getting us up on the air. As last week, he was on the air with us talking. And on this show, we talk community college athletics. We cross state lines sometimes. We went to Arizona last week to talk to AD and Director of Athletics with Eastern Arizona College, Jim Bagnall. And right now, we're going to the South Bay. El Camino College women's basketball head coach Steve Shaw, president elect of the California Community College Women's Basketball Coaches Association. And Steve, thank you very much for joining us today. We're excited to talk community college basketball and athletics with you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to come on and just chat with you guys a little bit this evening.
All right. And Mark Pavlovich always starts us off, Steve, and he's going to ask you one question, then we'll get into it, and hopefully we'll get into the basketball school that you went to for a brief moment back in the day and talk a little bit about that also. So, Mark, where are we headed?
Well, I was going to say, Ed, we've got technical problems with Corey, so let's get him off the air now. But Steve, first of all, we want to thank you for being here. And one of the things I want to do, Corey, is we are always lucky enough where we say that the gentlemen or the women that we have had on our show have an incredible lineage and are wonderful individuals. Steve, first of all, I want to congratulate you as a coach / educator or an educator / coach, because Corey, as we always emphasize, we're talking about student athletes. So Steve, congratulations. You had 3 of your basketball players on the all academic list. And we'll talk a little more about that. So they were academic athletes of the year at El Camino. But most of our guests aren't known by the general public. So let's go back. And Steve, I hate to say it, being somebody from Cal State University, Long Beach, as we go back into your history, even as a player, we can reminisce where you were and where it's taken you and how you've gotten to where you are right now.
Okay, so you want to go way back. We're talking about a number of years ago.
As far as you want to go.
Okay, well, I'll start off at El Camino since that's where I'm at right now also. All right, I was a student athlete at El Camino College and had the opportunity to play there. And from there, I transferred to Cal State Fullerton. Played 2 years of basketball at Cal State Fullerton. And then right after finishing my career there, I started coaching at Aviation High School, probably best known for Paul Westfall, and coached lower level boys basketball and assisted with the varsity. Few years later, I became the varsity basketball coach. Actually, at that point at Redondo High School, because aviation had closed at that point. And coached there for a number of years, had the opportunity to go to El Camino as an assistant coach with Paul Landro in the men's basketball program. Did that for a number of years, and then I was asked to take over for a year coaching the women's basketball team when the head coach needed to take a year's leave of absence. And I've been doing it now for 23 years.
Corey, let me go back for a second, Corey, on this, because one thing most people can't see, Steve is sitting down, and when they talk about the former players, talk about the prowess, I look taller than Steve while we're sitting in chairs. Both of us are 6'8". Well, no, I'm not, but Steve is. So, I mean, he really is a basketball player. He has the physicality. And Steve, I'd get talked about this forever if I don't take you back to, I think it was 1978, when you played at Cal State University Fullerton, and you had a magical season. And the only reason I'm saying this is to the guy that is over to my left on the screen is an alumni from Cal State Fullerton. And if I don't bring it up, he would. So let's go back to 78 and talk about that magical year of basketball at Cal State University Fullerton.
Yeah, it really was a fabulous year. We play at that time, what's the Big West now is the PCAA at that point, and tough competition. San Diego State was in the conference, Long Beach State, our biggest rival. And we were fortunate enough when we got to our postseason tournament to get on a little bit of a run. We won the tournament, qualified for the NCAAs. Went on the road, beat Michael Cooper and his University of New Mexico team in the first round. Went to Albuquerque the following weekend to play in the Western Regionals, and came up against Bill Cartwright and his team at the University of San Francisco. And Keith Anderson hit a last-minute jump shot to win that game for us. So we're in the Western Regional Finals playing against the University of Arkansas with the triplets, Delph, Brewer, and what am I missing? Moncrief. And had a chance, kind of similar situation, to win that game down the stretch, and didn't make that shot, or actually didn't get the shot off. We ended up losing by 3 and just missed out on going to St. Louis, Missouri for the NCAA Final Four.
And was that Cal State Fullerton's best basketball team ever? In my opinion, it is, but some people want to say others more recent. But would you say that was the best team ever?
For Fullerton?
Yeah, for Fullerton.
Well, I mean, I think what we accomplished is pretty unbelievable. For our conference at that point was really strong. There was some great teams in that conference. I mean, as I mentioned, Long Beach State and San Diego State both had outstanding teams. To go on a run, I think, and you lose the exact details, but if I remember correctly, I think the teams that we beat in the NCAA run were ranked number 6, number 8, and number 13 in the country, or something like that. So for us to be able to knock off that type of ranked teams on the road against people was a pretty impressive run. So I would argue that would be the best team that's come out of Cal State Fullerton.
And once you're done with Cal State Fullerton, you pretty much move into teaching and coaching pretty quickly. What did you take from that experience into your coaching at the high school level to begin with?
Oh, I think I've been fortunate to play for some outstanding coaches. My high school coach, Ken Brown, who was a legend. As I mentioned, he coached Paul Westfall at Aviation High School. I think he influenced me. At El Camino, I played for Ron Jacobs. He influenced me. And then obviously at Cal State Fullerton, Bobby Dye, just a great coach. And believe it or not, we still run some of the stuff with my teams at El Camino that we ran in 1978 with Cal State Fullerton. So even though it's over on the women's side, and even though the game has changed a lot and we've adapted and we've adjusted a little bit, guys that would have been on that team would come and watch our games and kind of recognize some of the stuff that we still do on the floor. I think more important than that, though, is just the fact that team was such a good team as far as no egos, nobody out there for themselves as an individual. It really was the strength of the team that gave us our success. And hopefully that's what people would see when they watch El Camino's women's basketball team play right now, is they would see a very team-oriented group of young ladies out on the court playing.
And Steve, when we're talking about basketball, because Corey and I did NAIA basketball for a number of years, and the teams that we did that were championship teams were the women's side of the game. And Corey and I would always call basketball. Corey did play-by-play. I listened to him a lot and chimed in once in a while. It was basketball. It was just a game. We never deferred to, you're watching women's basketball compared to men's basketball. So my question goes, how have players differed through the years? And I'm talking either gender, if you want to discuss it, because I think the game has changed. Yet most basketball coaches I talk to look at me and say, Mark, basically it's the same game. It's the players that have changed.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. It's the same game. It's changes, right? The three-point line has changed some things, some of the different techniques, some of the different philosophies. But it's always been a game where there's multiple ways to win, right? You look back in the old days, you look back at whether it was Jerry Tarkanian and the Runnin' Rebels and the way that they ran and they were successful, or Coach Boyd up at Fresno State, if you want to remember back then when they were big-time control tempo and slow things down and keep teams in the 50s, they would win then. Well, it's not like one way is the right way to win and the other way is not the right way. You just get lucky. There's different ways to win. And it continues to be that way. And so You figure out what's best for your program, you figure out what's best for your personnel, and you try and give yourself and your players the best chance to be successful on the court.
And being at El Camino for 23 years, what has your philosophy, besides being team oriented and family oriented as a team, has that evolved um, from the time you started till now, or has it always just been there? Because I have a follow up question. I don't know if that one came out right, but has it always been that way for you?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's always been the same, right? But I'm sure over 23 years, it's changed. Kind of as you go through the years, you don't recognize those little increments sometimes that even you yourself make from year to year. So to me, I'm still that same young guy coaching as I was 20 years ago, right? But the reality is, I'm an old man that's probably changed and coaches a little different now and does things a little bit different than I used to do. I just don't recognize it so much. But overall, it's the same, right? The athletes, really both on the men's side and the women's side, the athletic ability of the people that play sports now, and in our particular situation, women's basketball, just unbelievable, right? You get really, really good athletes, good athleticism. So because of that, they're able to accomplish maybe more things on the court, right? They can get places quicker. They can anticipate better. They can, run the floor faster, or they can do some of those things. But the general concept of the game is still the same.
Okay. And the follow up is, what's the best change that's occurred over your time?
Uh, I just think probably from the women's side of the game, just the total number of players that are involved in playing the game, just the growth of the game. Um, it's so popular in high school. You have the youth leagues now that have the opportunities for young girls to play. You have the camps that are specific to the girls. You see the game on TV more now, and so more young girls are getting exposed to the game earlier in life. Um, there's players, that are recognizable to people in the public. That people know
Right.
who they are. They get the attention. Or you see them in commercials. You see those type of things. So probably just the growth in the interest in the number of players that are involved in the game of basketball is probably the biggest change. And because of that, you get better players, right? More people playing, you're going to get more, better players. They're playing for more years. They're getting better coaching. It all starts to trickle down, and the game has continued to develop and get better and better every year.
Mr. Nailing through the years of watching community college basketball, because my partner up there, Steve, is really, if he could be on the court every night if he was younger and could still run and shoot and play defense and not wheeze running up and down the court, he would be in the gym every night. I mean, Corey is a true basketball junkie. And from a fan's point of view, he's a basketball purist because he can go back to the teams you talk about and talk about the players today. He's always said to me, community college basketball was a sport at one time that you could see some of the greatest players. But as time has gone on for you as a coach, and maybe not necessarily so true on the women's side as the men's side, they seem to leave very quickly, and it seems harder and harder each year for a community college coach. You talked about the talent, but how tough is it to find the talent on the community college level? And even your competition makes it tough to get people to come to El Camino and to play in a very solid basketball program.
Right. I think, in the past, the community colleges was more of a local community college, right? And the local high schools would feed into it. And even now, as you see with the high school, where players are moving around, they'll leave one high school, they'll go to another high school. Uh, the the enrollment at a community college now has spread out. People come from out of state, people come from other parts of the state. Obviously, being in Southern California, we're close enough to where people can come from anywhere throughout the greater Los Angeles region, right, to come to El Camino. So from that standpoint, your potential athlete pool has grown, right?
Right.
From the other standpoint, though, is people are shopping more. It's not like, well, here's El Camino. It's in the South Bay. If I go to high school in the South Bay, that's the community college I'm going to go to. And so uh, and unfortunately now people have a tendency to go more to the places that are already successful. And I understand that, right? You understand that, right? That people want to go to programs that are successful. But just like my experience at Cal State Fullerton, something special about going and kind of putting your own stamp on a program and creating your own special niche in that program. So the other thing I think on the men's side, and again, I am not nearly as involved in it as I had been for a number of years, right, is the recruiting process starts so early and so young. I mean, they know so far ahead of time pretty much what players are coming, and especially the key players and who they're going to get down the road, that it makes it a little bit more difficult for a community college athlete to make that transition. I think usually a community college athlete is recruited to fill an unexpected need. So maybe a team's starting point guard as a junior gets hurt and they're not going to be able to come back the next year. Well, we need somebody, and our freshman's not ready to play for us yet next year. We need somebody to come in, so they'll go and recruit a community college guard, or one of those type of scenarios that happen. And so, or meeting an unexpected need that the community college athlete will be able to fill that spot at the Division I level. But as you guys know, there are outstanding programs and opportunities to play at D2, NAIA, D3, whatever. Playing community college or playing college athletics at any level, right, can provide just an unbelievable great experience for you. And so hopefully the community college athletes move on and have great opportunities to experience those things.
I was going to give that to you, Mark, for the next one.
Oh, well, you know me. I'll keep going. You'll disappear. I wonder where he went.
So I took 2, you take 2.
Well, and I'm going to stick here with talking about the student athlete because, Steve, as I mentioned, opening up and introducing you, that you have 3 players that are I call them academic All-Americans for the simple reason you look at their grade point averages. Cruz's grade point average, who played for you, was 4.0 all year long, Corey. I mean, this was a consistent 4.0 on when she was playing basketball. Nguyen had a 3.65, and Mesa had a 3.61. And I think that says a lot about the educator coach that we have sitting with us tonight, because somebody has to keep whispering in those student athletes' ears how important their education is. And so, Steve, I know basketball is a great game to play and it can take you places, but where does that educational conversation come in with all these very talented players?
Well, for us, it's right at the top of the list. First of all, even if you want to be selfish and look at it from a basketball-only standpoint, the better you do academically in the classroom, the more opportunities you're going to have basketball-wise, right? But for all of us at some point, right, our basketball career is going to end, right? And we're going to be hosting talk shows, or we're going to be doing different types of things, right, instead of out there in the gym playing, right? And so you want something in place ready to move on to in life. And so the academics part of it for us is big. And I don't know if you were going to get into this a little bit later, but I'll just take the opportunity now to mention that as the president-elect of the California Community College Women's Basketball Coaches Association, one of my responsibilities is to put together our academic all-state team. So the 3 young ladies that you just mentioned from El Camino College were joined with over 100. I think the total was 114 young ladies from California community colleges who were recognized as academic all-state players, which means from the start of their competition all the way through, that they maintained at least a 3.5 grade point average. So for sophomores, I think that's a particularly impressive feat because it's a cumulative grade point average. So not only was it during the last season, but it was during the season before as well. So their entire time at the community colleges, from their first semester when they started competing their cumulative grade point average put them at a 3.5 or above. And to me, this is the greatest honor that we can recognize our student athletes with as a coaches association, because it's what we want from our players, right? To be student athletes, to perform well on the basketball court, to perform excellently in the classroom, and to be prepared to move on to the university.
And Corey, just to add to that, Corey, just to add to that, because Steve brought up through the whole year, Steve, there is a minimum requirement of units that they have to carry too. So those that are listening to or watching us tonight, these aren't people that are taking just one class. I mean, these are full-time students that are playing basketball for you and your fellow coaches.
Correct. So for them to be even eligible to participate in athletics, they have to be a full-time student, a minimum of 12 units. They have requirements to pass a certain number of units towards their degree within each semester. And they have to have passed within that calendar year 24 units, which keeps them right on track and going towards graduation. And as I said, maintain that 3.5 overall grade point average.
So what you're saying, not on my academic path that I had when I was in school for many years. Exactly. So true student athletes. And so with head coaches, having that at the forefront, that student success and academic success is a must. What other programs are available to student athletes at El Camino and for the Coaches Association provides?
Right. I think most of those type of support programs are available on the individual campuses. I know at El Camino College, we have a great system of support for our students, for all of our students, and in particular for our student athletes. We have 4 of our academic counselors on campus that work with our student athletes. They are excellent and making sure that they are taking classes that are going to prepare them to transfer. They understand all the requirements for transferring to schools for athletic opportunities, but they also understand where they need to be academically just to transfer in order to move on with their degree. Each of our departments on campus at El Camino College have tutoring, study halls, those type of opportunities. So if a student's having a particular struggles in their math class, they can go to the math division area, and there are tutors available there for them to get assistance with. We have a writing center on campus where you can go, and even now during this time, all of these resources are available online. So we haven't missed a beat with any of them. Every single resource that was there before in person is now available online. Through our athletic department, we have an athletic tutoring area where we can assign our students to attend a certain number of hours during the week, and they can get general tutoring help there. Or if there's a need for the specific help, we can get them directed in the right way to go to those areas. And then our athletic office itself, our athletic director, his assistant, they are super supportive of our student athletes, and they will work really hard tracking our students, making sure that they're being successful in the classroom, and they're going to be prepared to move on to the university. So really across the board at El Camino College, the academic part of the student athlete is really stressed.
When we stick with that academic theme for just a second, Steve, because you're head of the Coaches Association and you talked about 100, I thought it was 115. I won't quibble over one academic. I call them All-Americans. But who makes those standards? Is it you? Is it the coaches combined that say, hey, for somebody to make a team academically, do the coaches say, hey, what I think makes sense is a GPA no lower than, and a number of units that they must carry is this? Or is it all sort of dropped on your lap where the curriculum comes down and you say, okay, coaches, like it or not, your students have to do X to get on this academic team? Who makes those decisions? Is it a collaborative message from all the coaches in basketball, or the one person?
Well, I'm certainly glad that I'm not the person that makes that decision. So it's actually, even though our Coaches Association oversees the putting together of the team, it's actually an award that is part of our CCAA, our California Community College Athletic Association. If people are a little bit more familiar with high school, it'd be like the CIF of high school. Well, that's the CCCAA, our ruling organization. They have a series of awards and recognition that they give to our student athletes. And within that, one of the areas is an academic all-state team that each coaches association is able to recognize and award. And those guidelines, those criteria that are set forth by our CCCAA.
And one of the programs you have at El Camino that I found interesting, the South Bay Promise on campus that's provided for students. Please explain that to our audience because I read it and I loved it, and I want you to explain that to our audience.
Yeah, so again, in an effort to support our students, again, all students, not just athletes here, the South Bay Promise program is for all students in order to support those students that want to come to El Camino, especially those that maybe are in financial hardship and find it a little bit more difficult to afford to come. We don't want them to be left out. So the South Bay Promise provides an opportunity for graduating high school students, first time, full-time students, right? So people that haven't been at the college level yet, they're first time and they're going to be full-time students to come to El Camino College. And if they go through the process, which is really a process that any student at El Camino should be going through anyway, they can qualify to have their fees waived for their 2 years at El Camino, as long as they continue to be enrolled and they continue to be successful in the classroom. Yeah, it's a great program. So, they just apply. I think one of the key parts of it that I'll get to, besides the application process and they go down, one of the things they have to do is they have to be associated with one of the many kind of student support success programs on campus. Athletics is one of those, right? Our honors transfer program is one of those. We have a program called First Year Experience that just really guides students along as they enter El Camino. We have a Puente program that focuses on the Hispanic community, if you want to be a part of that. The EOPS program, an Equal Opportunity, right, for Students program. And so there's many different cohorts on campus that they can be a part of. And they have to be a part of that in order to qualify for the South Bay because of all the additional support and all the additional structure that helps them receive when they come on campus. But athletics is also one of those. So if they come in, they want to be a part of the South Bay Promise program, and they want to choose athletics as their cohort, they can do that. And then that going through the process, that'll help with their fees, and it'll waive their fees, and it'll just eliminate really the biggest bulk of the cost of going to community college.
Wow, that's great because that alleviates so much stress for a student as well. I mean, you don't have to worry about making money or where am I going to pay for books. That's a wonderful program I think you guys got there.
It is a great program.
One of the things I want to know, Corey, which is a little strange, me, I come with these off-the-wall thoughts while we're on the air here. El Camino also has a firefighting school that is basically over in the Santa Fe Springs sort of area. And I just need to know, Steve, have you ever had any of your players, basketball players on the women's side, look at you and say, hey, coach, I'll be here on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays because I'm studying and training to get in someplace at a fire department along the way? I thought about that today. I thought, why should those people be deprived? So I thought I had to ask you just see if there was that strange student that tried to do both.
Yeah, immediately I can't recall somebody that's been a part of the fire program at El Camino. And they do have a number of satellite programs. There's one in Inglewood, and I think, as you say, out in the Santa Fe. So I think they have different satellite areas. So if one of our players was involved in that, I think that they would be able to work it out. I know some young women basketball players that later on have gone in, not necessarily from El Camino, but later on have gone into the fire department. And I think that they're certainly prepared for that after they've gone through a series of training through athletics. But that's probably one of the areas maybe that I've changed as I've grown as a coach. In my younger days as a coach, you were going to be at practice. You were going to be at practice every day. This was going to be the priority of your life. And if you missed, there were great consequences, right?
Okay.
And I've kind of grown to learn that, you know what, different people are in different circumstances, and I'll tell my players, I'm going to treat all of you fairly, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're all going to get treated the same, because you're all in different circumstances in life, right? Whether it's through the fire science, or whether it's preparing for an anatomy test, or whether it's just some issue at home or work or something. I would say I'm probably much more understanding and flexible now with young ladies that have those type of conflicts, and we can work it out so they can do both. You don't want it to be where it's having a negative effect upon your basketball team, right? But you also don't want it to where it's having a negative effect on the young lady's life either, and eliminate them from being able to benefit from being a part of a women's basketball team.
And Steve, that just really sets up the next thought that's in my mind. And thank you for the answer, because you brought up that male attitude of a coach dealing with young females playing the game of basketball. And we've noticed in sports today that women are slowly transcending into the men's game. For the women's game, the men have already been there for so many years. So what has changed for you as a male coach coaching the women in the game of basketball? We know maybe a woman coach might be able to relate to a young woman easier. So how have you changed besides what you just told me as a coach through the years, coaching young women in the game?
Yeah, I think both through the years of maturing from a young coach, to where I'm at right now, having two daughters of my own who were athletes, one of them who now assists me and helps me coach. I think those change you, right, as you go through life, right? I mean, that's why there's some benefits to experience. You learn, you change, you grow. Hopefully some of those rough edges get smoothed off a little bit, and you become better. So I don't think I've changed in how I handle my players so much. I think probably the biggest thing is I've changed in how I handle myself. Where
Oh,
early
okay.
on as a
Very
younger
cool.
coach, I think you allowed maybe the emotions or the ego or some of those things to influence your actions a little bit more. And I think through the years, at least hopefully for me, I've learned to be able to control those things a little bit more within myself. And so then the way that I interact with my players is a little bit different. Um, it has been important for me, from when I first took over, as much as possible, to always have female members of my staff. As I mentioned, my daughter, who played for me, is also one of my assistant coaches. I have another young lady who's one of our ex-players that's one of my assistant coaches. And I think that's important. I think it's important to have a female around, not only for them to be able to be a little bit more in tune with some of the things that are going on with the young ladies on our team, but also as the role models for these young ladies to look at as somebody that, in case they wanted to, continue in sports, whether it be in coaching or playing or athletic training or strength and conditioning or, whatever it might be. So I do think it's nice to have females on your staff as well as the males.
Okay, and we wanted to also ask regarding that situation, especially in today's times when things are changing. Have you personally experienced any pushback or resistance to being a male coach coaching women's sports? Personally, or have you known or been in part of discussions like that?
Yeah. You know what? I haven't. I'm sure, it's just the way society is, right? That there's going to be situations probably where that comes up and it's happened. But for me personally, I haven't experienced it. From the people at El Camino, both our administration, all the other coaches on staff, I've never felt anything but support as being a part of our athletic program coaching female athletes in our coaches association. Uh, I have great relationships with many of the other coaches, and I haven't felt that one way or another. The one thing I would say is that there are a lot of outstanding basketball coaches at the college level in women's basketball in California, and I'm sure it's throughout the other sports too. But I am just so completely impressed with the quality of coaching that I see, whether it be male or female. And I think part of the reason why that's happening is that the colleges are recognizing that their responsibility is to hire the best coach for that team, right? And whoever comes in and whoever applies, and if whatever they're trying to accomplish in that program, choose whoever it is that's the best coach for that program. And I think schools are doing that. And so you get just some outstanding coaches. And when I say that, I don't mean just coaching on the floor. I like the way that you've referred to it before, and being educators. We are educators. It's co-curricular. It's part of the collegiate experience. It's not professional athletics. It's not just athletics. It's part of the collegiate experience, and it's part of the academic program as well.
And Mark, real quick, I got to follow up to that. Why, Coach? Why don't people get that? I mean, we've been around this for a long time. Why don't people get that?
Boy, I don't know. Sometimes as you see the professional athletes get further and further away from that kind of mentality, where it's much more entertainment and much more, I don't know, it's just kind of a different mentality, that starts to filter down, right? It filters down, and probably the biggest influencer of that is parents, right? The way the parents, handle things, and the way the parents perceive things, and kind of the type of guidance, whether good or bad, that their child is picking up from them, whether it's intentional or not, at home. The way the parents talk about the coaches, the way the parents talk about the teammates, the way the parents talk about all those things. Their children are going to pick up on that. It's going to influence them, and by the time they get to be college students, they're going to be kind of set in a certain way. And but I think for the few programs that maybe really lose sight of that, the majority of them are on track with it. The majority of them recognize the value of not just the athletic part of it, but the academic part of it as well.
And in saying that, we're talking about respect and everything else, Steve. I mean, one of the things that Corey and I were very lucky to broadcast a women's program that was highly successful on the NAIA level. Yet there were still times that 28 people would show up to watch their game, and then the men's team, which was a losing team, didn't have a chance in heck of winning anything, would have 800 people get into the gym, and Corey and I'd be sitting right next like this to each other. Why have women's sports on every level never gotten the love or respect? I mean, we have Title IX that's tried to enhance it financially and protect it. But I mean, being a coach that has dealt with the women's side of the sport more often, why is there not the love for women's sports? I still don't understand it, that people just look at women athletes and go, yeah, it's nice, and walk away from the game.
Yeah, I think there is that sect of people that are still that way. Why it is that way overall, I don't know. Is it the publicity? Is it the availability? But I think more important than that is not why is there a difference, but the fact that the women's sports are growing. I think 10 years ago, the number of people in the gym at that game that you were talking about was smaller than it is now, right? So is it as big as the men's game now? Maybe not, right? But it's bigger than it used to be, right? It's grown. As I mentioned earlier, you see more games on TV. You have more interest. The numbers of people. You see the UConns or some of the big Division I school programs that are breaking attendance records, right? With the type of people they're putting in the gyms. You see more and more the big crowds at the NCAA Final Four for women, the same as for men, and they're trying to go to the big arenas now also. I think maybe what hurts the game, even though it's gotten better, when you look at the NCAA men's tournament, what is the biggest round of that? I mean, what's the round that everybody's most excited about, right? It's the first weekend, right? The ones versus 16s, right? Everybody knows about the 12 versus 5 upsets, right? I mean, you have where on any given day, any of those teams can upset the other teams. And I think we're getting closer to that in the women's game. And even though there are more good teams and more outstanding teams, there's still a bigger spread between those top teams and the teams that are still good enough teams to get into the playoffs, but maybe aren't good enough to really compete with the top teams. And so on those opening weekends, maybe you still have more lopsided score games, where it seems like on any game in the men's side of the tournament in those first two days that anybody could beat anybody, and it just makes it so exciting. And that's just a growth process. The men's game hasn't always been that way either, right? And so that's a growth process. Yeah. So as the women's game continues to grow, I see it at our level, with our playoff bracket, I see the parity and I see how it gets harder and harder, and you start to see more upsets, right? And you see it at the Division I level, as you track the Division II, the NIA, it's happening at those levels. And as that happens more and more, where it really is that excitement of the underdog being able to beat, the Cal State Fullerton, being able to beat the University of New Mexico's, right, in the NCAA playoffs. It's that type of excitement that just really draws the fans.
Right, and it's funny that Mark mentions that team we did. It was Vanguard University. We love Vanguard. That's the team we did, and it's funny that you mentioned that because your teammate at Cal State Fullerton, Kevin Heenan, when he played on a 7A team, assistant coach for Vanguard University on the men's side. We got a chance to watch his son play, Dennis, while he was there for 4 years and playing. So one of the other things I love about the game of basketball is you're not too far away from somebody knowing somebody. And that's one of the things we love. And also, glad you brought up the fact earlier about the athleticism in women's, because we were in a Waffle House years ago discussing the athleticism of women's basketball. And Mark and I were proponents of there is athleticism, but the parents we were talking to, a couple of them didn't see it. But it's one of those things that it needs to be showcased. And you have a showcase, the sophomore showcase for community college women's basketball. Can you tell our audience what significance that is for your athletes?
Sure. And before I jump ahead, let me go back, with the Vanguard program. We were fortunate. We had one of our young ladies a few years ago that played for us and then transferred and played for Coach Davis down at Vanguard and had a great experience there. And so I try every year to get down and maybe watch a game or two, even before she played there and stuff like that, and would run into Kevin and we'd have a chance to chat a little bit. And so it's nice seeing those teammates, right?
And her name?
Megan Penweta. Right. And she played 3 years ago or something like that, a little left-handed guard that was a good shooter and played for us. So Megan Penweta. Our sophomore showcase, is an opportunity for us to give young ladies who have not yet committed to go to a 4-year school an opportunity to be seen by university coaches. It's connected with our championship weekend, which, again, unfortunately, with these crazy times we are, right? It was canceled last year, right? Because that was right when the pandemic was breaking out. And and we're not going to hold it again this year. And so even though the showcase this year isn't going to be held, we are putting together a showcase booklet. We're trying to put together information so that we can get the information out to university coaches as much as possible. But on normal years, the showcase is an opportunity for young women who are recommended by the conferences. Usually that means being an all-conference level type player to come together on championship weekend and play games. We try and put the players together by conference, which I think is a great experience. So these young ladies who have been competing against each other maybe for 2 years, trying to beat each other for conference champions, now get to come together and play together on a team. It's a one-day event, very similar to other type showcases you would be familiar with, where they play a game, maybe sit a game, play another game, and within the course of 4 or 5 hours, they might play, 3 or 4 times. And It's a great opportunity. Many of our California Community College athletes, and I know many of my athletes at El Camino, that's the area where they've had a chance to make that final connection with a coach and end up having scholarship opportunities that have come out of that.
Corey, since you're talking the game itself, Steve, one of the things I'd like to see happen in the men's game on the community college level is the same thing that goes on in the women's game. I love games quarter by quarter, not half by half. I find it more exciting each quarter being played. I feel an urgency in the game for both of them. And if you had an opportunity to change some things up on either side of the court, men or women's, in community basketball, community college basketball, what are some of the suggestions you might make as a coach on how it might be able to improve the game of community college basketball?
Wow. Well, I do think I love the changes that we've made with women basketball in the last few years. One of them going to the quarter system, right? I think college men's basketball is the only game now at any level that plays halves, right? I think everywhere else now is playing the quarter system. Along with that comes, a change in the foul count, right? So where you're not getting to the 1-and-1 situation anymore now, right? It's bonus situation where it's 5 and a quarter, and then it resets for the new quarter. The other thing that I think has been, and I was a little bit leery about it, being an old guy, you're all hesitant about change. But in the women's game also, we've gone to where in the last minute of a game with a timeout situation, you can advance the ball to the front court. And that's a new strategy and a different kind of strategy, not only for giving yourself a chance maybe to score, to come from behind at the end, but also to advance the ball in a situation where maybe you can protect the ball a little bit more, and hold on to a lead and not have to worry about those backcourt turnovers and some of those things. So that's changed the strategy of the game a little bit. I think those would be good change. I've liked them so much within the women's game. I think those would be good changes for the men's game. Boy, off the top of my head, I can't think of anything else, I haven't heard anything else kind of coming up through the pipelines, that we're looking at as far as changes. But I know those are the changes that we've made that I think have been really good for our game. And I would encourage the men to make those same changes.
Do you think, and let me just throw one at you, because I really would like to know Coach's point of view. Do you think players should have unlimited fouls, or that people should foul out of the game?
You hear that talked a little bit more about at the professional level. And I think there it's more a factor because it goes back to that entertainment value, right? People are not paying the big money to see LeBron, although I don't know when the last time was he fouled out of a game. I think maybe that's not going to happen, but that's maybe not a good example, right? But see foul out or be in foul trouble, right, down the stretch of a game. And so maybe the discussion of, the foul shots and the ball back, if the coach decides to leave that player in the game, if they get to a certain number of fouls where they're not necessarily fouling out of a game, maybe that's something that could be looked at. In a way you want the best players on the court deciding the outcome of the game at the end of a game, right? And so for somebody to be out of the game because of foul situations, maybe that prevents that from happening. So maybe if it was something even similar in our game where you could have those best players competing down the stretch for the final outcome of the game, but some kind of an additional penalty for those players if they get too many fouls. I've seen some of these showcase type games, right? Not necessarily our sophomore showcase at the end of the year, but it's kind of these preseason or recruiting or other type of showcase type things where they don't keep track of individual fouls, right? And the fouling becomes excessive, right? It's that to be. You want the penalty there. You want it to controlled a little bit. But to eliminate somebody from the game, if we could maybe make that change, that might be one I'd be open-minded to.
I'll never foul out again.
No, foul them out. I'm
you and LeBron.
Give them 5, give them 6, and let them go. If they foul out, they foul out.
They foul out.
Yeah. That's the way it is. I got one more question for you. At the community college level, we talk about success and what is a successful season or a successful coach. What
Mm,
constitutes success for you?
mm. So I would say, well, every year with our teams, when we talk about this, our primary goal, our number one goal for the season is to win conference. That's what we're building towards, right? We want to be successful on enough on the court to be conference champions, right? And we've been fortunate, right, to have that kind of success. I think we've won conference 4 of the last 6 years, so we've been able to accomplish that. But when the season's over and I look back, that's not what would determine to me whether we were successful or not. I would say one of the areas more that I would look at is, did we become the best basketball team we could become? Right? Did you reach your potential? Right? Because some of our teams were good enough to win conference. Some of them weren't. So does that mean it's not successful? Right? Does that mean there's just no way that we could be successful? Right? In Southern California, I don't know, there's 49 teams, there's 7 conference champions, right? Does that mean only 7 teams have successful seasons and the other ones don't? I don't think so. So I think it's becoming as good of a basketball team as you can become. And we talk about enjoying the process, wherever we are to begin with. That's where we're at. That's how good we are right now. How good are we going to become? And let's work through this process and let's enjoy the process of becoming there, of getting there. And the other side of it that I stress, at least in our program, is the way we handle ourselves. From the beginning when I took over and we maybe weren't very successful on the court, right? And but we talked about, we're going to handle ourselves like a championship team before we ever become champions, right? And by that, I mean, you conduct yourself respectfully. You act with good sportsmanship. You're a good representative of yourself, of your coaches, your teammates, of the college. And because of that, we've built a program, I think, that is very well respected throughout California community colleges, that we're going to go and compete. We're going to go and play hard. We're going to fight, but we're going to handle ourselves well. When we leave, as silly as this may be, right? But when we leave the bench area that we leave from, there's not going to be trash left there. When we leave the locker room, there's not going to be trash left there. We're going to recognize and treat people and appreciate people that are contributing to what we do, whether we're on the road for our with the people that are scorekeepers or equipment people or ticket takers or whatever it might be. So the way my team handles themselves throughout the course of the season, when I look back at that helps me determine whether we've had a successful season or not. Because those, in my mind, are the little things that really give an indicator of what kind of successful lives these young ladies are going to have. Winning a game is nice. Winning conference championships, that's really nice. Believe me, I love doing that, right? And we celebrate. But seeing teams grow and develop and become the best they can be, seeing young ladies handle themselves with great character and treating other people the way that they should be treated, those are the type of things that help me determine whether our season was a success. We can be very successful on the basketball court, and if I feel we've fallen way short in those areas, I don't have as good a feeling about that season as maybe having way fewer wins on the court, but being way better in those areas.
Well, Corey, that's after that, I've got only one thing to say. Steve, I really want to thank you for being a wonderful educator, coach who cares about your student athletes. I mean, that's why young people go to school to get educated, but you just don't want to learn from the book. You want to hope that somebody cares about your dreams as much as you do. And that's the sort of man that you've presented yourself tonight. Thank you for caring about these young people that you've coached, that you've educated through the years, and taught a great deal of character too. I just really appreciate people like you. And I hope that our new coaches that come along, people like your daughter who coaches with you, will carry on the same tradition you've had for all these years at El Camino and be able to pass on what you have passed on to the previous generations to make them the wonderful people they are today. So thank you, Steve. I really appreciate you as an educator and coach.
Well, that's so nice of you. I appreciate that, and it's really been a pleasure to be on with you. What a great opportunity, and what a great thing the type of emphasis you guys place upon community college athletics, and hopefully a lot of people will pick up on it, and your viewership will continue to grow and grow, and more people will catch on to the excitement that comes with California community college athletics.
Yeah, and we're definitely excited. Steve, thank you very much for joining us. That was great. I mean, that was wonderful. So, for Steve Shaw, thank you very much. For Mark Pavlovich, always Buddha, we got you. Ed Ford, keeping us on the air. We want to thank you. It's El Camino. You guys got a good one in Steve Shaw. I'm Corey Nayland, and you've been watching the show on SportsNetUSA.net.